Hey guys, welcome back. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana, and you are watching Marksman TV. Today we have another gun store vlog. We're going to discuss what would happen if the NFA were repealed. What would be ultimately your experience walking into a gun store with an NFA-free world? If that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. That's coming up now. Okay, so first let's discuss why we are talking about the NFA no longer existing. Now, right now there is a lot of battles being fought against the NFA. Now, for those who don't know, the NFA is the National Firearms Act. It went into place in 1934, which essentially imposed a $200 tax and a registration and transfer process on so-called NFA items, which would include machine guns, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and suppressors. In the GCA, the Gun Control Act, destructive devices were added to the NFA, and there were impositions on imported machine guns, which we'll talk a little bit about in a minute. A couple decades later, in 1986, we had the FOPA, Firearms Owners Protection Act, which also included the Hughes Amendment, which put further restrictions on machine guns, which again I will talk about. So this is sort of a three-pronged sort of thing that we are dealing with today when it comes to purchasing so-called NFA items. Now, as I discussed, there are a lot of attacks happening against the NFA currently. The biggest and most prominent right now is a case involving Matthew Hoover, who runs the YouTube channel CRS Firearms. Now, within the past calendar year or so, Matthew Hoover was indicted on several counts of, conspiracy to sell machine guns due to the auto key card, which he was helping sort of give information about and potentially distribute, or at least give credence to or help promote, if you will. What the auto key card is essentially a credit card sized piece of metal, and on it is a drawing or an etching of an auto sear, which would fit in an AR-15 should the person who purchased it decide to cut it out and use it in that instance. But as it's packaged and sold, it is merely a picture of an auto sear on a piece of metal. Now, he is currently fighting for his freedom, and his case is, currently sort of churning through the legal process right now. He's being represented by Zachary Zerme and Matthew LaRosiere, who Matt himself also has a YouTube channel called Fudbusters, and I will leave links to both of these channels down in the description. Both channels are worth taking a look at. Now, in the case, there has been a big window open due to the Bruin decision that recently went through the Supreme Court. They are using this as a window to attack the NFA. If they are successful, this could lead into the NFA being repealed. I'm not going to talk about the chances of this happening or not happening, or whether it should happen or should not happen. You guys can make those inferences for yourself. I am in the firearms industry, so you can kind of assume where I would lie on those lines, but I don't need to spell out my opinion for you. But let's talk specifically about what the NFA is and what the implications would be if the NFA no longer existed. Well, first we need to look at what the NFA actually does. First, the NFA controls firearms that are deemed as NFA firearms, which would be machine guns, SBRs, which is short-barreled rifles, SBSs, which is short-barreled shotguns, and suppressors. Now, in 1968, the GCA was enacted, which put further restrictions on things that are called destructive devices. These would be things that fire or launch projectiles over 50 caliber or certain explosives or related ordnance, such as hand grenades, mortars, and even live tank barrels. In 1986, there was the Firearm Owners Protection Act, of which that included the Hughes Amendment. The Hughes Amendment dictated that no new machine guns could be manufactured for the civilian market post-1986, or May of 1986. So if we go back to what the NFA actually does, it imposes a $200 tax and a registration on those NFA-controlled items. And anytime you want to transfer one of those items, you have to go through a Form 4 process. Or if you want to manufacture one of those items, such as an SBR or a suppressor, you go through a Form 1. The problem is, not only are you paying $200 to receive the item, that's a tax paid to the government, you have to go through the registration and transfer process, which currently takes about 8 to 15 months. So if you want to buy a machine gun or buy a suppressor, not only are you fronting the cash for that item, but you have to wait in excess of sometimes even a year to be able to receive that item. Now, with the removal of the NFA, that is the key thing that goes away. There's no $200 tax, and there's no registration and transfer process. That means if a gun store has the suppressor you want or has an SBR you want, you literally just walk into the store, you complete the 4473 background check, assuming you clear the background check within the designated waiting time of your state, if your state has one, you take it home just like you would any other Title I firearm, such as a Glock or an AR-15. Now keep in mind, if the NFA were to be repealed, it would still be left up to the states if they wanted to impose any similar type of registration or taxation type of program on those items. So even if the NFA were to go away federally, your state may still impose a certain similar type of restrictions, which may then not really change much for you in your particular circumstance. Now this leads us to the number one class of items that people are interested in when it comes to repealing the NFA, and that is machine guns. Now, if the NFA were removed, does that mean you can go into a gun store and just buy machine guns, all the machine guns you want at seemingly low prices, or at least prices that are similar to their semi-automatic counterparts? My answer to that is not necessarily. Now, this is going to get a little bit convoluted, and I am admittedly not an attorney, so if I misspeak here and there's somebody watching who is an attorney or knows a little bit more about this, please feel free to speak up in the comments and I will highlight your information. But I think what I'm saying is true. First of all, you have three tiers of machine guns as of right now. Right now, the NFA is not repealed. These are transferable machine guns. These are machine guns anybody can buy. Remember, the NFA is not a restriction to own these items. It has not banned any of these items. It has just made them very difficult to get them. The pricing of transferable machine guns is what makes them difficult to get. If you want a fully automatic M16, for example, you might pay in excess of $20,000, even though a identical firearm that's semi-automatic might be $1,000 or less. This isn't because of the NFA. This is because of the Hughes Amendment to the Firearm Owners Protection Act of 1986. That is what made the pricing of machine guns go up. That dictated that no new machine guns could be manufactured post-1986. If the NFA were to be removed, that would not necessarily mean that the Firearms Owners Protection Act and the Hughes Amendment would also be removed, unless there's language in the Hughes Amendment that says if the NFA is removed that it would also be removed concurrently. I have found no such language. So while yes, there are machine guns that exist today you could go in and purchase without doing a Form 4 over the counter or anything like that, or you could go in and just do a 4473, pay cash and walk out with it, that would change and it would be easier to buy them in that regard. However, that does not mean that Smith & Wesson or Ruger could go ahead and start churning out fully automatic M&P 15s and AR 5.56s due to the Hughes Amendment. Also, we have to look at imported machine guns. Now, there is a class of machine guns called pre-86 dealer samples as it exists today, without the NFA being repealed. These are imported machine guns that came into the country after 1968, that is the GCA, but before 1986, that is FOPA. In the GCA of 1968, it said that it restricted certain types of firearms that could be imported into the United States. This included machine guns. So any imported machine gun brought in and registered prior to 68 would be transferable. Any domestic manufactured machine gun that was manufactured and registered prior to 86 would be transferable. Any imported machine gun between 68 and 86 would be a pre-sample. Any machine gun at all made or imported after 86 would be a post-sample. Of course, with the NFA gone, that sort of tier system would be eliminated, but the problem is you still, because of 68, could not import new machine guns for private consumption, and because of 86, the FOPA, you could still not manufacture machine guns for private consumption in the U.S. market. That means that the pricing of those items would not necessarily fall, because pre-86 machine guns would still be the only machine guns you could buy, of which there's estimated between 200,000 and 300,000 of them that currently exist today. Now, true, without a registration, it would be really hard to prove when something was made and where it was made. However, still, Smith & Wesson and Ruger are not going to be manufacturing new machine guns and distributing those, because they can be audited, their factories can be audited, and they have to keep a list through their A&D record books of what they're making and where they're going. So anything that's manufactured as a fully automatic on their assembly line being sold to the private market would be very quickly identifiable by the ATF. It would obviously be cause for shutting them down, so they're not going to do that. So removing the NFA would be a huge step in that direction, but still free and wide availability of machine guns would not change unless the importation restrictions of the 1986 GCA and the Hughes Amendment of the 1968 GCA and the Hughes Amendment of the 1986 Firearms Owner Protection Act were removed. Then you would have complete and total free reign on machine gun and related type firearms. The final point is, and I hear this all the time, will current machine gun owners be upset if that were to happen? Again, if FOPA and if the GCA were still intact, I don't think it would have any change in the negative value of machine guns. In fact, I think they would go up short term. If, let's just say that the registry is demolished entirely, the NFA is gone, and FOPA is gone, and the GCA is gone, or at least the elements that pertain to machine guns or NFA items, and now Ruger could make an $800 select fire AR-15, would that then cause some machine gun owners would probably be upset if they have large investments. I'm a machine gun owner. I own a couple transferable machine guns. Yes, the value of those would tank. That is not something that would bother me because I have a long list of other machine guns I would love to own, like an M249 or an M60. I would love the opportunity to own those. Currently, those particular firearms as transferables are priced well beyond something that I, at least in the near future, would be able to afford. So yes, the things I have would go down in value, but then I would actually be able to purchase so many other things that I really can't obtain, and I know a lot of you are in the same boat, so keep that in mind as well. I think the only people who would be upset are the people who own every machine gun out there and don't have any interest in buying anymore. Maybe they would be upset then. But anyway, guys, I'm going to leave you off with that. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. If you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to my channel and hit that bell notification button so you are aware when we are posting new content. I'm going to leave you guys off with that. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV, and we will see you next time.